Do not worry. Easy to say, but we seem to have a human propensity to worry. Worry is the opposite of trust. Do you tend to see the helicopter view or the detail? This looks like all twigs, but in here is a centipede. Your Heavenly Father sees both the helicopter view and the detail of your life, and He cares. My guess is this centipede is not worrying about what might happen. He simply forages for his food and lives a day at a time.
It seems to me that there's two major concerns in our modern Western culture. The first is to extend life, and the second is for economic growth. I want us to look at those two key concerns. Let's first look at the issue of extending life, or maybe it should be termed postponing death. As we do so, let's remember that each individual death is of great significance. So I'm by the War Memorial in Rockerdine, a day for us to reflect and remember. Let us do that and bring ourselves in perspective with our past. In World War I, 1% of the world's population were killed through the battles. In World War II, 3% of the world's population were killed, 2% through the battles themselves, and a further 1% by resulting disease and famine. If we look at the period between the 1930s and the 1970s, then the major world dictators killed a total of 5% of the world's population during that time. If we think about disease and look back to the Black Death of the 14th century, in that period, a total of 19% of the world's population were killed through the Black Death in about 6 years across Asia and Europe. When it recurred in the Great Plague of London in 1665 and 6, a total of 15% of Londoners were killed through that plague. In our own time, the World Health Organization reports that 0.01% of the world's population have died because of COVID. In our own country, one of the more severely affected countries, 0.07% of our population have died because of COVID. And under the very worst case forecast presented last Saturday, possibly a total of 0.4% of our own population may die because of COVID. Let us move to life expectancy. In 1800, the world average life expectancy was 29 years. If you lived somewhere like Europe, you did better at about 35. By 1950, that life expectancy had been increased to 46 years globally. And by 2019, the global average life expectancy is 72 years. Phenomenal progress. And in our own country, it's about 81. The best is in Japan at 85. Much of that improvement has been achieved through improvements in child mortality. In fact, the Journal of the Royal Society of Medicine in volume 87 says that if you survived childhood, childbirth and battle, then in 100 BC, your life expectancy was 72 years, with a maximum lifespan of about 120 years. Not much different to what we have today. And that was the whole premise of their paper. And as we look back to New Testament times, the Apostle John, we believe, lived to be almost 100. Now put that in perspective. He has now been with Jesus nearly 20 times as long as he was walking on earth. You see, It doesn't actually matter how long we live. We all have to face death in the end, and what lies beyond it. What does it profit a man to live the longest life and yet to lose his own soul? I've chosen to be outside a bank this morning to talk about our concern with economic growth. In 1992, Clinton's presidential strategist came up with the slogan, "It's the economy, stupid." And the economy is important, whether it's the national economy or our individuals and household economy. Our income, our expenditure, our debt. But let's bear in mind that in 2019, our gross domestic product per person, adjusted for inflation, was 4 times what it was in 1948. In fact, more than 4 times. If we see a 10% contraction, it will become about 4 times. Also, in 2019, from a more personal point of view, the median household disposable income, in other words, the income we receive after taxes and all that sort of thing, was double what it was in 1979. The median household in the United Kingdom today is twice as rich as it was 40 years ago. That's phenomenal. What is it about money? It seems however much we have, we still haven't got enough. What does it profit a man if he gains all the assets in the world, if he has all the income, and yet loses his soul? I'm here at our local hospital, and the reason is because in 2015 2 German doctors from the University Medical Center in Göttingen wrote a paper entitled "The Historical Prevalence of Anxiety." They had detailed data going back to the 17th century and a bit more sketchy back to Greek times. And they came to the conclusion that it was fairly constant over time, with typically up to about 30% of any given population suffering from anxiety disorders during their lifetime. The truth of the matter is, there's always been reasons to worry and there's always reasons to be anxious. And yet, as we enter into this current period with COVID and with another lockdown, we have yet more reasons, we find, for us to be concerned and worried and anxious, as we find that the things that we have trusted in and relied on are being shaken. Whether it's our job security and our income, whether it's our health and our life expectancy, or our relationships and our sense of community, our ability to plan and to have freedom. As these are shaken, it's often the poorest in society who are most impacted by crises. And yet Jesus says the very simple and clear command, do not worry. How on earth are we meant to be able to keep that command in our situation today? So how does that all work? It's time to reflect, to sit still and remember who is God. Jesus says, do not worry, because your heavenly Father cares for you. He cares for the birds. He cares for the flowers of the field. How much more does he care for you? As I sit here, it's autumn. The leaves have fallen, many of them have. Seasons come and seasons go. But the word of the Lord stands forever. And just as seasons come and seasons go in nature, so too seasons come and seasons go in our own lives. But what we know is that there is resurrection. We don't need to worry about the length of our life because there is a resurrection. We are going through into eternity. And that eternity is beautiful and wonderful and amazing for those who believe in Jesus Christ, because we are going to be with him. A young child is completely dependent upon their parents, but in time they will mature. In this life, we too are completely dependent on our Heavenly Father. It is he who determines our ultimate paths. And we can rest in him because he is a loving and caring parent who's looking to mature us and prepare us for eternity. We don't need to worry about our daily provisions. It doesn't mean we don't work at all. The ants and the birds, they collect their food. But we don't need to worry about it because we know that our Heavenly Father cares for us and he will provide all that we need.